Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board number 2 public meeting of May 10th, 2012 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to leave the meeting room, please. If you need to speak, we are live, correct? Okay. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Garagos.
Here.
Board Member Karoglian.
Here.
Board Member Malikian.
Here.
Board Member Sakai. Here. And Chairman Zarifian.
Here.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on May 2nd, 2012. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I do not have any oral communication cards. Chairman Zarifian, none present?
Yeah.
No oral communication cards?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
We have no staff announcements this evening, and we have one item on tonight's agenda. And at this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Zarifian.
Thank you so much. I think we can get started with the presentation.
Sure.
Yes, please.
Sure thing, Mr. Chair. This case number is 1-PDR-1202768-A. The subject property is located at 350 Mount Carmel Drive. The summary for this project is to construct a 3,370 square foot, 3-story single-family residence with an attached 440 square foot 2-car garage on an undeveloped lot located in the R1R zone. This is the first time submittal for final review by the Design Review Board. Previously, in December 2011, the planning hearing officer approved a CUP for a new 3-story single-family residence to be constructed on the subject lot, as the average current slope of this property exceeds 50%. The environmental associated with this, the planning hearing officer approved a negative declaration. As I said, that the average current slope is greater than 50%. The average current slope of the entire lot is 59%. The amount of grading is approximately 1,100 square feet of yard of cut and 1,100 cubic yards of cut and 87 cubic yards of fill to accommodate this construction. There are 2 coast live oaks on the lot. A memorandum from a consulting arborist documents the 2 protected species would not be affected, as the proposed single-family residence would be 60 to 70 feet away. I'm going to approach the board to finish up my presentation. Just talk about the subject lot. Currently, it's undeveloped, and it's approximately 3,000 square feet. It's irregular in shape. It has a depth in excess of 400 linear feet. The topography of the lot has an upward slope from Mount Carmel as it goes up towards the rear of the lot. The pinnacle of it is somewhere central located, so it slopes upwards, it reaches its pinnacle, and it kind of slopes a little bit downwards, and it goes back up a little bit. So, the zone of this property is R1. And the surrounding properties to the north is R1. To the south and east, it's ROS, which is residential open space. To the west is an SR zone in the 2 freeway. And once again, the subject site's R1R. Site planning for this project, it's going to be located as close as 18 feet from Mount Carmel, the property line from the street. And the closest interior property line is going to be 10 feet from this area right here. The pad will be located on the lowest point, or at the flattest portions, which is closest toward the street, to reduce the amount of modification to the natural terrain. Also, there will be a at-grade patio at the northern portions of the lot. There will be a 2-car street-facing garage. Although I know I said in my staff report that they didn't specify the materials, actually the plans do. I don't know if this is from an update from the during the application process, but they are going to provide paver stone driveway. Staff is just going to recommend as one of the conditions to consist of a permeable surface, such as California driveway or brick pavers on sand. The landscaping, as I mentioned before, and as attached, there was a memorandum by consulting arborists regarding the 2 oak trees on site. On this lot, this plan right here, they do show them right here. There's 2 of them. They're going to be approximately 60, 70 feet away. The overall amount of landscaping they're going to provide is about 88%. The minimum is 40% by zoning code. To achieve this at-grade patio on the north side of the lot, they will have 3 successive retaining walls. There will be a series of 3 retaining walls. The maximum height of these retaining walls will be 3 feet. It will be of a tan-colored split-face retaining wall, and they can be viewed on a section on 4A42, which is this drawing right here. As you can see, there will be 1 retaining wall here, a flat patio over here, and then there will be 2 more retaining walls over here to achieve that at-grade patio as demonstrated right here. Mass and scale, overall the house will have a 3-story configuration. Each level will be stepped back into the property. As you can tell from this section here, the split pad configuration will reduce the amount of grading, and it will allow the house to follow the existing topography. And although the zoning code does, in this zone, states that the maximum is 2 stories, however, it does allow for 3 stories when the building pad or where the location of the primary building is located has an average current slope greater than 40%, which a survey was provided by a land surveyor, which demonstrates the pad over here will be 47%. So therefore, the zoning code technically can allow this house in this zone to be 3 stories. Onto architectural style. The subject property is on a short block of Mount Carmel, which is developed with 3 single-family homes, approximately the 1990s era, and across the street's 2 freeway. The style of the homes, which there's attached photographs over here for you. In short, their designs are nondescript. They have stucco, aluminum nail-on windows, stucco covered foam moldings, pitched roof with clay tile roofs. The applicant has stated the style of his home is traditional inspired. Design elements he has included were some that has been included within the neighborhood, such as stucco combinations, stacked rock, concrete flat tile roofs, fiberglass / wood hung windows. The section drawing he has provided here on A41, staff believes, the way I read this, it's going to be a nail-on because I can see nail-on flanges here. But however, staff recommends that these windows to be a block frame with recessed placements and have wood sills as he's drawing on his elevations and the surrounds, so we can replicate what he's trying to represent on his renderings. The house will have a pitched roof design with gables, which has a simple aesthetic. Staff does recommend these turn-ins from the gables to be eliminated. Yes, sir?
Can I ask you, when you mentioned the recommendation, also state the reason?
Sure. Let me get back to that where it was right there. Well, we were going to recommend to remove the turn-ins.
Do you want me to jump in here, Dennis?
Yeah, that's fine. I believe it's to if he's going to have a traditional style inspired homes, usually in the front-facing gable, the way I understood it was this would not would accomplish that. But if you can jump in and maybe.
Yeah, when we were looking at it, those kinds of returns are something you typically see on a colonial revival house, and this is kind of going for a craftsman style. So we thought just to stay consistent with the style like we usually try to, we'd recommend that.
Thank you, Jay. Just to continue some of the textures, he's proposing to have stacked stone at the second level and first level at the gables and at certain volumes or these areas where it's popping out. To provide a simple aesthetic, staff believes the amount of stone can be reduced, although we do believe as a base, like such as the garage or the base of this first level right here would be fine. However, they could replace the stacked stone at these areas with hardy siding, horizontal siding, as they presented during the CUP before the planning hearing officer. Staff believes that might be a little bit. It would provide a little bit more traditional or maybe a simple aesthetic than having the overuse of the stacked rock.
Is that also a style issue or is a preference by the staff in terms of?
Want me to jump in here, Dennis?
Well, the way I would say is usually when you have this type of cladding on the exterior, especially like the stacked rock, this usually ties the building to the ground.
Sure. Yeah.
And when it's up here, it usually doesn't make any sense. We would usually have some type of siding that in these areas that would be more traditional. But as Jay, if you'd like to jump in.
No, I think Dennis just hit it. It's the idea of having this kind of unsupported masonry volume. Masonry generally ties the structure to the ground, and it looked like it was kind of floating in the air there.
Sure. No, although I might know, but I think it's better to shade the comments with some record.
Absolutely, it's a good point. That pretty much ends as far as my presentation for architectural style, and I was just going to end with staff's recommendation to the board, which is to approve the project with the following conditions. One, block frame fiberglass windows with recessed placement, constructed wood sills should be provided to match the simple aesthetic as provided on this rendering or any of the elevations. In lieu of the stacked rock of the exterior finishes, a combination of hardy plank, horizontal siding and stucco should be applied to the second floor of the gables. Also, hardy horizontal siding and stucco exterior finish should match at other areas as exhibited on this conditional use permit. Although as I mentioned before, we're okay if it's at the garage. Staff recommends it's okay if it's at the garage or at the first level or here as it ties it to the ground. Also, as we mentioned before about these turn-ins at the gables, staff recommends to eliminate those. The fourth condition that staff recommends is the driveway. I know it says paper stone driveways here. Still, staff would, I believe this might have been revised plans and it showed up right now, but we still like to reiterate that either a California driveway or they do provide these brick pavers on sand for sustainability. The last thing was, and I forgot to mention this in my report, but on the elevations, they do have the Trex handrails, which for the stairways leading from the street or the leading up to the front entry. Staff would recommend eliminating the rails and receding the stairway into the ground so that it would have less of a visual clutter. And then you would have retaining walls to be the supports on the side to comply with the building code. But that's as far as the conditions staff would recommend to the board.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I think we're ready for public what do we call it?
Open
Comments.
public hearing.
Hearing, then. There we go. Open. We have one card here from Mr. Larry Lackner, sorry. Lashner, sorry.
If you don't mind putting your microphone, yes, thank you. And your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Larry Lashner. I'm the applicant. Address is 5202 Mountain Springs Ranch Road in Laverne, California. Thank you, Dennis. Nice job. Okay, this is sort of your typical difficult hillside lot. You know, that's about all that's left here today in Glendale. But interestingly enough, about 6 or so years ago, there was a design for this lot, and it was approved by the Design Review Board. And my client brought it to me and said, hey, I want you to design, use this as the basis and so on and so forth. And I looked at the house. Having recently gone through design review, I realized it was going to be tough to get that one approved because things have changed, So we basically redesigned it in total, completely redesigned it because it had a very long driveway coming up to the pad up here with a garage up in front and a big turnaround area and substantial retaining walls. And it was, pretty, a lot of structure. So what we did, very briefly here, since I'm the only one, I want to make this brief and you guys can get out of here early tonight. What we did is we reduced the size of the structure immediately. Okay, we went from pushing 4,000 square feet down to pushing 3,000 square feet. The second thing we did is reduce the size of the garage from 3-car to 2-car. Okay, so that immediately reduced the mass and scale. The second thing we did is we lowered the garage to essentially street level, as you can see there. That's the nicest rendering up there on the top. We lowered it to street level. And the reason we did that is because we were able to tuck it back into the actual slope so that it essentially disappeared. It became a non-mass structure. And now the driveway is a very minor element as opposed to a very major element. The second thing that allowed us to do is to have steps from the front up to the house, which I think is a benefit, a substantial benefit. Next thing we did is we pushed the second story back significantly to blend into the natural slope of the property. And of course, that in and of itself required a complete redesign, so we just did it. We redesigned it, and now it blends very nicely. The last thing we did is we reduced the size of the yard because there was originally a pool and a pretty big yard. What we did is we slid the house all the way to the far side of the lot and got it away from the only house that it's next to, so it created a little more privacy for that home. And then, we applied substantial landscaping to sort of screen the little walls and make them, blend naturally into the surroundings. So, and by the way, this didn't happen overnight. This took a long time. We had several meetings with urban planning and planning. We received many very, very good comments. I have to say right now up front that I was very pleased with the process. We got some very good input, and I think that the end result is a very nice home that blends nicely with the actual site and with the surroundings. On the conditions, actually, we don't have any issues with any of those conditions. The only thing we would ask is if we could use a combination of the stone and the siding, as kind of as Dennis was saying, and that is to, have the stone on the lower portions of the home to ground it, and then have the siding on the upper portions. I think that would be just fine. Okay. Thank you. Unless there's any questions.
Question for you?
Yes.
On sheet 4.1, your section detail sheet, you
Yeah.
have a section of the eave detail.
Yeah.
The precast molding core that's going underneath that eave, that's going around the entire house?
Just the front.
Just the front?
Yeah.
That was actually my question to you. Where does it show on the elevation?
It doesn't really show on the elevation, to be honest with you. I think that's a carryover from a previous elevation. Honestly, that does not show on this rendering, and I think that's just an oversight. That's a good catch.
Do you plan to use it? Or
No.
No, you don't. So you
No.
don't plan to use the precast molding
No.
core?
Not on this.
Intent is the elevation.
That is correct. Yeah, good catch.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to meet with the building department for this project?
Well, I mean, informally, not, not from a submittal standpoint, but just to talk to them about it.
The SOLS report that you provided,
Yes.
second page, or,
Yes.
sorry, third page, do you have that copy?
I have it, but not with me, yeah.
Okay. Basically, in the middle of the paragraph, right before it starts talking about temporary shoring, it says, quote unquote, because of the slope above subject resident is already cut with no significant amount of soil cover, and this is based on the 2005
Previous,
project, right?
it's a previous project, correct?
Section AA, the building setback from the rear retaining wall supporting the ascending slope can be reduced from a code-required 15 to 10 feet.
Right.
And none of your sections are showing that. You're showing a retaining wall right up against the building.
Correct.
How do you address that? How do you propose? Because based on my quick, somewhat of a very sketchy calculation, because I don't have any scale drawings, you're going to have about a 16-foot retaining walls plus the 2-foot freeboard in order for you to meet that. I'm just wondering, any comment on that?
Well, because the house is stepped, the actual retaining walls are lower than that because you don't have one huge wall.
No, I understand. On the top, where you have this condition right here,
Mhm.
where you're putting the building next to the retaining wall, you only have like a 2-foot section.
Yeah.
And then over here, you're bringing the dirt right up to this. I mean, this is not an impact wall, assuming that. So based on that, you still have this kind of a condition. So based on your SOLS report you provided, this needs to be back in here, and this needs to be back in here.
Well,
I'm just going by what...
okay, but again, that's an old sales report for the old house. And also that condition exists only in a very small section because there's a pretty good, decent-sized walkway from the bedrooms to get to a deck on the side of the house on the back of that structure. So, I mean, I've built many hillside homes, many. That's basically all I do. And I've really never had any problem with the soils engineer in terms of getting approval on that type of situation.
On a 5-foot setback from
Yeah.
a retaining wall?
Yeah, I've never had a problem with that, quite frankly.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
The arborist's report goes back
was
to July 2011, and it talks about 2 oak trees.
Correct.
One of them apparently needed some work to be done,
Right.
so to speak. What are the conditions of those trees now?
The one tree is in fair shape. It needs some pruning and needs some love. It's not the healthiest tree in the world. The other tree is very healthy.
So they're
And-
still in the same
Oh yeah,
condition?
no, they're fine. They actually look pretty good. I mean, there's been, I think, a little bit of an improvement actually in the health of the trees since I visited the site the first time.
Thank you.
I walked the site with the arborist actually, the city, and checked it.
Great. Anything else? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think at this point we close the public hearing and we're open for comments from the board members.
I'll start. I don't have a problem with the general volume of the building. I'm glad that detail on the eave is gone. That didn't seem to make sense. Seemed like it came from a different style. I agree with staff that the return should be gone on the eave, I think. I also agree that the stone should go on the second floor. Doesn't make sense to me. I think the contrasting material would be good. There's something about the header heights on the second floor. The one over the entry raises up to what looks like 8 feet. The other ones are, I guess, are at 6'8", 6'10". And it's kind of the same issue on the first floor because it's a 10-foot plate and it looks like the windows are at 8. What happens is you sort of generate a lot of wall area above the window, which can sometimes make the windows look even smaller. And I think overall, I wish there was a little bit more of a hierarchy in terms of what the main rooms were. When you think about the living room, 2 of those windows beside the entry door are kind of the main rooms of the living room. And wouldn't the elevation look better if that was kind of a tripart window, maybe a larger center panel with operable sides, maybe adding a center piece that was larger, fixed panel? Something that would give the elevation a little bit more of a hierarchy. I think might be a little bit too much uniformity within scheme of the windows. I also think it would be nice if something else happened up in the gables. I think the idea, like I just said, where there's a lot of wall area above the window, that if it wasn't sort of differentiated either with a vent or contrasting gable material, I think it might seem a little bit high. Also, if they're sort of going for a, moderately craftsman or bungalow style, it might be nice to work in some kind of oversized outrigger or something that could support the gable. Maybe it's an option. If it was made out of 6x material, it could be okay in a fire zone. I agree with staff that I think the stairway should be changed to a retaining wall, not the trucks. And what else do we have? And then we did redo the windows such that it had the wood casing. They're just showing the detail from the window manufacturer. It doesn't actually show the trim pieces on it, so have them modify that detail to show the trims. I do think the soil thing is an issue. I mean, how the retaining walls are going to work, I think that could be something that might cause problems later, so I hope that's addressed, especially if it exposed higher retaining walls that might have a design review issue. That's about it.
I don't have any issues with the staff recommendations. In fact, I approve them. However, though, I have one concern here. The geotechnical study that was made in October 2009 and was referred to July, actually it was prepared in July 2009 and referred to in October 2009, makes some recommendations which I do not see referred to in the staff recommendations.
As far as the DRB?
As far as the DRB.
Most of the recommendations from, as far as from the CUP were incorporated as far as the approval from the PHO. We could incorporate the conditions of approval. I can review the CUP staff report to see what was read in there. I can read it to you guys to see if it does accurately reflect what your concerns are as far as what they're addressing in these reports. Just give me a couple minutes here, and we'll listen to the other board members, and I'll read that.
Thank you.
I have no problem with the project. I mean, I'm going down the list of the recommendations of the staff. Number 1, I'm fine with. Number 2, I'm fine with. Number 3, I'm not okay with that. I think the gable ends do give a little bit of a character, so I do like that, the way it's drawn, so I'm okay with that. New driveway surface permeable, I think it's mostly, if it is allowed by the soils engineer, being that it's on the hillside, I'm fine with that. And the stair leading, if it's possible, if it's not going to create a adverse impact on the retaining walls and other conditions, and if they're able to go ahead and get that stairs without a railing, I'm fine with that as well. As far as the setbacks and retaining walls, if the soils engineer okays it, then I guess I have no problem with it. The only reason I brought that up was because what Mr. Garagos mentioned, if the retaining walls gets higher than the building due to the setbacks required, even in some cases, I don't know if the gentleman has done projects in Glendale, but in a lot of cases, City of Glendale has a lot more to say than the soils engineer. So I would highly recommend you meeting with the, especially with the officials in the city, before you go a lot further into the design. It will impact the design. So if you end up having a higher retaining walls, we may want to see it back here. So the way it is, it's fine. The colors are fine. That's it.
I think the applicant has done a good job in responding to the hillside condition and designing to hillside guidelines. And I think we all appreciate that effort's been taken. I have no problem with the size of the house. I think you actually could have gone bigger because of the amount of space you have in that area. And obviously we don't have any concerned parties from neighbors who have privacy issues or, adjacent properties. I think overall the style for me works. I guess for me, I'm looking at more of living in this home, I would want to have more light being brought in, because you have that one side of the house where there's no windows at all because it faces the mountain. It's in the mountain, in fact. And I just wonder if the amount of windows that you have that are on the main front elevation are going to bring enough light 30 feet deep into the house on the first level.
Sure.
Sure.
You can approach them.
I mean, it's just a comment.
There were many more windows on this house when we started. The windows were reduced in size and removed per urban planning.
For urban planning.
Yeah.
Because of a codes issue?
No, just, the
Aesthetics?
opinion was that for this type of home that they were too big. We made them smaller, and we took windows out. And, so I you're preaching to the choir on that one. I would love to.
You are going to be looking at against the side of the freeway.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the lower level you're looking at.
This gentleman's suggestion here to put the window in the middle of the living room, I like that. There was one there before. I had that window there.
This looks like, I don't know what
It was there. So I'm okay with putting a few more windows in. I'd love to. I was, instructed really.
Urban planning had
suggested
a reason
not to.
for that?
The reasoning was, and this is basically Stephanie, at this point, this is quite a while ago, the reasoning was that these type of homes typically have smaller windows than the ones that we showed, and less windows. So, it's one of those things where, it's kind of hard to argue that point. There are a lot of homes out there that have smaller windows, but there's also homes that have bigger windows. So,
I don't know what was presented or what was
Right.
talked about, but I think what may have happened, based on how the elevation looked,
Mm-hmm.
it might have been a lot of those kind of small unit windows.
Mm-hmm.
When you look, just like you look now, it might be too uniform
Mm-hmm.
with multiples of small windows, that I probably would have said, get rid of some of those duplications of small windows. I think what I was getting at was, like in the living room, you'd have one larger window set
Yeah.
with side windows.
Right.
So there was kind of a hierarchy, and there would still be wall area, but you would
Yeah.
have an emphasis on certain windows.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that it's like
And
windows
again-
that doesn't look modern, contemporary,
you want
to fit in.
I would love to put that window in. I would.
Yeah, I think actually I support that idea.
Yeah.
It's a good
Thank you.
because you can maybe combine those three windows into something which is larger from the perspective of
Yeah, well, I like the idea of having the larger window in the middle with the smaller side windows there, yeah.
One of them's in the stairway, that's why. The third one's
Yeah.
in the stairway.
because you can combine those three windows and maybe from a percentage perspective have the same kind of amount of window
Yeah.
but larger.
Yeah,
I think it will help your living room tremendously.
we agree.
So we'll put that in
I
the.
think staff also mentioned in one of your comments that the windows come down to rest upon the stacked stone siding on the lower level,
Right.
and I think that that's a good comment to engage the finished material on the front. That would just add a couple more inches probably. I don't think it's that much further off.
That works. Works for me.
So, in terms of yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So in terms of the rest of the finishes, I think staff's comments about putting the siding on the second floor is valid. Keeping the stone just on the base. For me, I have an issue with the little pop-out window over the garage. For some reason, this feels out of scale to me, and I'm not sure what the fix is or if it bothers anybody else. But to me, it just feels like
Plopped on it.
it's not integrated into the building. It just looks like a bunch of the same size little houses that are plopped onto the front. And like you were talking about hierarchy, what's a room and what has more importance? And in this case, it seems like you just have these little end elements, and then this little element over the garage also tries to pick up on that. And I wish that it had more of a reason for where they were and less of a balance. And then with this little thing that pops out on the garage level, that there's something that could be tweaked in some way to make that work better. And maybe it's getting rid of it and just making it simply flat across the front, or maybe pulling the whole thing out. I don't really know. Maybe someone else has a comment on that if they see a solution there. In terms of landscaping, I think that the stair comment, if you can get it to work, that might look better. In terms of the illustration, it just looks like a lot of pickets, and I'm not sure you need that many pickets. But even so, I think integrating into the landscape might be better. I'm not sure you can achieve it, so we'll just leave that open. And then for the plant palette, I think it's a really interesting plant palette. You've chosen a lot of natives and a lot of interesting material that other people don't usually pick. However, the plan looks like you took a block and just pasted it on in blobs. There's no cohesiveness between the plant materials. I don't feel like there's really a design worked in there yet. It's sort of like you just are throwing things down in islands and then having ground cover around the islands. So I just would like to have this, stick with the same palette, maybe add some more interesting plants to it of a smaller scale to mix in with that, and kind of work it into more of an integrated plant scheme so that it looks like it's, again, like tying into like what is the more hierarchical importance to the project instead of just having the same plant materials and plopped into islands. Also, it's really hard to read the landscape plan because all the symbols look very, very similar. So I could be just reading it, but the overall massings look like islands of plant materials, and I think it'd be more interesting if you could, again, tie that into addressing more of the shapes of the building.
That can be done.
So.
You may sit down if you
You may sit down. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to keep it up there.
Okay. If you like to maybe
Sure.
elaborate on.
Yes, just to add in our previous conversation with Board Member Karuglian. As far as the conditional use permit, there was a condition there that just kind of blankets the recommendations and the conditions within the geotechnical support, the geotechnical report. I apologize. The condition number 17 of the conditional use 18 reads, the site is located in an earthquake-induced landslide hazard zone as indicated in the State of California seismic hazard maps, in parentheses, the Pasadena Quadrangle, issued by the California Department of Conservation, Division of Mines and Geology. The geotechnical and geological report shall contain the geotechnical engineers and geologists' findings and recommendation in all matters pertaining to the stability of the site and adequacy of all structures, retaining walls, drainage, etc. So, the condition that was drafted here was from another department, kind of blanket in and tie in what this report was stating. So,
Thank you.
Okay. I guess it's my turn, right? Everyone is good. So, generally, I like the house. I think it's well sited in the hillside. Just quickly, in terms of the amount of wall area above the windows, as Board Member Kyrgios mentioned, I think you might be able to reduce the slopes above the pitched roof above the windows just a bit. I think it will help kind of, it seems like there would be a better relationship and the way the roof sits in relation to the hillside and the length of it, it seems like a bit pointed, so it gains a lot of height, which I think that's what you were referring to, right?
Yeah, and it's actually two different pitches, it looks like. Looks like it's two pitches, too.
It's
The
what?
center was a steeper pitch also, it looks like.
Yeah, probably. But I think, it's something that it takes a little tweaking and you'll probably get it just right. The siding issue, I'm not sure if siding is added to this building will help it or not, because it will be such small amounts and it will look like patches of this third element that I'm not sure how it might look like. Do you see it?
I can see it as just stucco.
It seems like if it's left simple and not added another sort of piece to look at. I think I understand the weight issue, but I'm not sure if siding is the answer because it's just a very small amount. Then in terms of the railing and the stair kind of set into the hillside, I think if we just go with retaining walls, this staircase is going to look like a tunnel because you need to provide a guardrail height, I assume. But I think if you
The other thing is that I don't know if you really need a guardrail.
no, it's not a guardrail, but maybe
Even
handrail.
at this condition, I'm
you need
not sure.
handrails. Handrails.
Oh, handrail from what? Falling where?
No, handrail
More
from
than 3
falling down
steps.
all the way.
3 steps, you
Just
still need a hand.
go ahead.
But I think the handrail is for the off to the side.
No, it's just to be able. That's guarded, but
But handrail, but not what they have, like all this picket fence. It can
Right,
be just
yeah,
a
what
right
I'm
pipe.
saying is
It can just be a pipe.
handrail.
what I'm
Yeah.
getting at is that it
You don't
could be a combination of maybe a low
Low wall.
retaining wall,
And then
which is
maybe a
made in the
wooden-
same material
Some
as
sort of a wooden post.
and a wooded piece that kind of makes it more set into the landscape, but also provides safety for. I think that could be entertained. Then the window, we said the living room can really enjoy a larger, and also I think the building will be better because this way, I think when you look at this, you cannot tell if it's this. If it was just a little bit longer, it could have been looked at as another type of building rather than single family. You know what I'm saying? So by adding something which kind of nails down that big space in the room, in the composition, it will help this to become closer to a single family house. Then I think everything else is fine. I like the returns also. I think it adds something to the overall scale of the house. Although I appreciate
It's the wrong
comment.
detail, though.
It is the wrong
I know
detail,
it's
but
the wrong, but sometimes the wrong detail just does the right thing to the house. You know what I'm saying?
The problem is, are you assuming that detail normally has a tiny little hip roof? It's actually a roof section that works into that piece. That's how it's traditionally done on that other style.
Yeah.
Is that what we're proposing for that? I mean, it's going to have to. That is something. It's made out of something. It has to shed water.
Draw what you just said.
Well, it's normally on the style house that he was talking about. This has a little hip roof. There's a little piece of roofing on that
That's
section.
what I thought you said. Yeah.
Okay, on that style, which is not this style.
It's a great place for bird nests. so
Yeah, I mean, it
keep
has
that
to
in
build out
mind.
something. I just think it's. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the other style. This could very easily be the other style. You'd put siding all over it. You'd forget about the stone, and it would be that other style. You know, salt box. I think it's broken up too much for that style, but that is that style. I just think it needs outriggers on it. You know, do outriggers rather than that, which will give you
Right.
detailing on the eaves,
Yeah,
and
no,
I would
I-
increase the fascia size.
Maybe
so.
that's what the answer could be. But I think it needs something. If you take
Right.
that away,
I agree. It's too plain. I agree.
Plain. Very
I'm just saying that's the wrong. I think
yeah,
it's going to bring up
outriggers
too many
are
other
a
people.
better idea,
Yeah.
I think.
plain. Yeah.
I agree.
And I think the fascia needs to be bigger too. The fascia's a little too small. Scale wise.
Oh, the
The gable
snow?
fascias. No, the gable fascias.
Big.
These boards. Yeah.
Oh, these.
The
Yeah.
fascias
yeah.
seem a little,
those,
little
yeah.
small.
You're going to do outriggers underneath all of them and then widen it out.
Yeah, traditionally, I mean, something like that, you might only have ends in the top. I mean, these really need to have a vent detail on them. I mean, again, I don't want to get fussy about it, but that's why it looks kind of blank. It's
all
because
the
those details aren't
details.
there. You know.
Yeah, and I appreciate Mr. Kai's comment about this. It seems like in relation to this, it's a big jump of scale and it doesn't connect itself to the volume below, but I don't have an answer. But I think it has this kind of one scale of things, and then the center becomes bigger and marks the entry. So this one, I don't have an answer.
I mean, the issue is
But I
that
think-
that whole wall is one plane,
Yeah.
so you want to do something to break it up.
Partially it has to do with the way we're looking at it. You'll always be looking at this house from down below. So you may not experience it in the... One thing that I also don't have an answer for it, it might be totally fine. You know, in plan, this side of the house, you see how it comes out, and then this is the entry where you have the gable right on top of it. On one side, you have one height because it comes out further, so it goes up further, and this side is lower. So this acts as the transition between the two different roofs on either side. So that's the only part in this composition that kind of moves away from being classical solution. But I don't think it's going to break the... Probably no one will notice.
I noticed.
Yeah, but
I noticed that the roof line didn't quite match up all the way across, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, looking at that drawing,
Yeah.
on top, it's not even centered, so I'm not sure exactly which one's correct now, if the illustration or the colored elevation.
They're both the same.
Well, the peak goes to the center of the center window. I'm sorry.
Goes up
So if
further.
you look at this one, the peak goes to the center window, but in
Yeah.
that one it doesn't.
Oh, it's just because the angle
The
is different.
perspective angle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's different.
That's
Yeah, but anyway, I agree with the comments. I think maybe we should go over what other comments were added and
Can I just get
finalized.
quick clarification from Commissioner Garagos about the beam ends? If you decide to remove the returns, would you also want a beam end at the ridge of each gable?
Yeah, you would work in and do
There'd be
one at the
three
plate
in
at top.
each.
And
Okay, I
if it's
just
a
didn't
long
hear
run,
that.
You throw an extra one.
Okay, great.
And then possibly vents, also.
So, Dennis, do you have the comments? Written
I have
up?
portions as I was trying to work in with some of the other things I was researching, but I will try to review as much as I can, and maybe Jay, I hope you took some notes to help me fill in the blank. But what I've heard here, the fenestration pattern could be improved to show some hierarchy. To add oversized outriggers at the gable and to have larger fascias. The section drawn, I believe that was on A4, 1 or 2. The window detail should include the trim detail also as well. They could add some vent detail at the gables. Okay. I know there were some concerns about the retaining wall behind the house and the tie-in with the soils report, which Mr. Karuglian was discussing. If the retaining wall were to project above the ridge line of the house, I can understand how that can be a concern, and I know the neighborhood of the Glendale neighborhood can be very vocal of that exaggerating maybe the appearance of the home with the wall behind it. I don't know if there was a resolution by the board by that, but I know that was a concern by board member Malakian.
What was my concern?
If the retaining wall behind the house were to be set back further away from the home, as depicted in the soils report, if that projects above the ridge line of the pinnacle of the house, that can be a concern, and you would want to see that again. I mean,
Yeah, I do actually, but according to the soils report, what he's saying is they're okay, so I don't see any problem with it. But yeah, I mean, if the retaining wall is going to be taller than the building itself, and you're going to see that, I think not only they'll have a problem, I think visually, I think we're going to have to.
There's
I don't
also
know, it's up to you
questions-
guys.
How does it work? If something in that nature happens, who is the body who will say that you need to go back and being reviewed
The
again?
condition on the approval.
The building inspectors would
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah,
Well-
if we don't make it a condition, that will happen. I mean,
If-
they'll.
Essentially, these retaining wall issues would have to be resolved at the time that it's submitted for plan check.
Yeah.
So what the board can say, if the retaining walls
Substantially
are
adhere
substantially taller
to,
than the
What's-
proposed ridge,
Yeah.
the board would like to review the retaining walls. Otherwise, staff would be reviewing the submitted plans, ensuring that it meets our zoning code. In an upslope condition, in this case, obviously, they would need to have, well, if the retaining walls would not be able to exceed, I believe, if I'm not mistaken,
Behind it's 15 feet,
a
right?
maximum of 15
So,
feet.
but here's my question: if they end up raising the retaining or moving the retaining wall back, would they be able to step the retaining walls and put it in a 3 consecutive 5-foot retaining walls?
Well, and that's something that the board can condition, that if retaining walls are necessary for the rear, along the rear portion of the house, that
Because,
they be
I mean,
successive.
ultimately, I don't think we have a problem with the house, and if that condition comes about, I think that would be the solution, that I would, if it comes back to us, I would say, let's step the retaining walls back. But I don't know if they've already used up the 3 retaining walls in the property, that, I don't know, that's more of a
I
zoning.
mean, the biggest, what you brought up that might made me think about it is once that retaining wall is outside of the building envelope, it may have to be separated. You know, it has a maximum height.
Right.
When it's shielded by the building, it's not a problem. As soon as it's outside the envelope of the building, it has to pull
Exactly.
down, and then the setbacks issue and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So we can.
So I think as a condition, if that is going to be, just to ease their pain, if that becomes an issue, then rather than one tall retaining wall, we would have those
Tier it into,
tiers.
so that it would be, the appearance would not be apparent from
Right beyond the
it would be
building
below the
envelope.
ridge line, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And as per code, it would have to be decorative, either split face, poured in place
Right.
concrete, some sort of decorative with earth tone color grout, as required by our zoning code.
Continuing what staff had heard, I kind of jumped in the middle of this. I know that the window above the garage, that the gable that's popping out above the garage, that board member Sakai had an issue with that, and perhaps, Jay, do you remember what the...
You know, we didn't get any, that was an open question, so if anyone agrees with that.
No, I think probably
Leave it?
it will be okay, because otherwise
I
we
mean,
have to redesign
the only thing I
it.
could think of there is that you would, extend that roof down further, and it just became a shed extension, not a gable, and was wider, closer to the width of the garage. Somehow mimic the garage roof, but I mean, I don't know what else you'd do other than making it bigger.
To project the whole bay forward over the garage and extend
Exactly,
the roof.
and keep the roof continuing down, so it looked as a shed extension of the roof, mimicking the garage. I mean, but I don't know if that's any better.
I don't think it's any better.
I
Would that be a
think it's
consideration?
fine.
No,
I think
it's fine. It's not a.
Okay.
It's on a borderline that you can almost say.
I think if you change the windows for the living room and the stairs, so those 3 windows aren't like 3 little windows, then it would bring all the
Help.
attention to the main entrance in the living room, and that would be sort of like just a side thing. Where right now, that's to me the front of the house, and the rest of it's like a backdrop.
Actually, it's a different pitch, which is what's causing a lot of the problem, too. The
It's higher,
pitch of the
right?
garage one is steeper than
Yeah,
the
that's
second
another
floor.
issue.
So it might just be enough of maintaining that lower pitch on those side ones. The 2 center gables are the same pitch, but then the side ones are at a lower pitch. That might help.
Have a
That might
pitch
help
problem.
the garage one.
Pitch problem. So lower the pitch and adjust and make the windows to the left
Yeah.
bigger, and then you won't even notice it.
Yeah, I think we can leave that to the discretion of the architect. Okay.
If I could get clarification just on the living room window, where we have the 3 windows, 2 of those face the living room and 1 faces the stairwell. Are we proposing to take the 2 left windows and open up a fixed window between them to have a 3-part window, and then leave the stairwell window as proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
Additional comments? The planting palette, there was no cohesion on the landscape plan. To add more of an integrated palette and have some type of hierarchical, I forgot how you word it, but subject matter to the planting, so it does make sense. Perhaps you can refine what I'm stating here.
I think I said it better earlier. Just rewind the video.
I have no doubt about that.
So like,
Rewind.
yeah, basically that you have little islands of plant materials on the planting plan that make that more of a integrated design. But the palette, just to add to the palette, I think the palette is working pretty well. It might just help to add some more material to it, but they don't have to. That's just an option, just to kind of rearrange what they currently have so that they're not just these floating islands of shrubs in a sea of
Yes.
ground cover.
Also, you mentioned the cohesive layout or concept.
Yeah, sort of relates to the building and the lands and the topography.
Continuing on, reduce the pitch of the gable above the front entry. I think we're talking about the dual gables that's on the third level on the elevation, as that might have exaggerated the height of the house. We're talking about the one of the gable with the tripart of the 3 hung windows on the highest, the third level. One of the comments was didn't agree with staff's conditions number 2, which was it had to do with the placement of the stacked rock, reducing the amount utilized. Not necessarily was it necessary to have a hardy plank horizontal siding. I think I heard about that comment from 2 board members. Did we want to see if that was overall consensus, or are we okay with staff's recommendation, or are we okay as designed?
I don't think the stone is appropriate on the second floor.
I
Yeah.
don't think so either. I don't think you need the hardy plank per se. I don't think that's important to add another element. But I think for sure the rock doesn't make sense. It's kind of, like they said, floating in space.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for this piece to have stone. So it comes up and makes this. But I think the rest can...
I mean, I'd like to leave it as an option that they could do the siding, because I think it would be better. Are you saying it'd be better if it was just stucco?
I was just trying to ask you guys, see what you think. I thought maybe siding might look somewhat odd, especially if you add the supports you were talking about replacing. It's something
Not an
doesn't-
E-brace, it's just an outrigger. It would just be horizontal.
Oh, horizontal.
Just a
sorry,
horizontal.
yeah.
And
Not
when,
an
when,
E-brace.
when staff was thinking about considering siding, it was primarily because it's a long facade and it's
Yeah,
reminiscent of a
breaking,
ranch
breaking.
house where you often have a mix of siding and stucco, especially on pop-out areas.
I'm okay with it. And not a big kind of a problem. Just wanted to see how everyone else felt about it.
So maybe we could just leave it as
Option.
Optional.
optional.
Not condition, but
Correct.
consideration.
It would be essentially to eliminate the stone veneer on the second floor and either allow the option for the architect to either replace that with siding or with stucco.
The second and the third floor, except for the entry.
Correct. The third. I apologize. To clarify that, it would be the third floor, but the second level of the habitable space.
But the element over the garage, you're keeping the stone, or
No.
we're taking that out too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So second
yeah,
and third level, no stone except for the entry element.
Yeah.
The entry in the base.
Okay, got it. Redesigning the stairway leading from the street to the front entry to have a combination retaining wall and maybe a wood handrail adjacent. I'm going to reiterate this: the windows at the living room to be enlarged. I believe there's suggestions to have maybe a tripart with operable ends, maybe a large fixed center. And that's all as far as my notes have. Jay, do you have anything else to add? Or
The only other thing I have is at the first level, at the entry level, to lower the sill height of the windows to match the height of the stone wainscot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Oh, and and if we could get clarification on staff condition 4 about the driveway being built with a permeable surface. Was there agreement on that?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't think a grass strip, just the pavers on sand.
I have one more question to the board. Do you think the scale of the stone is too small? Like with this landscape behind it, it can be a little bit more rustic. Because this model looks better somehow, but this one looks very, very fine.
That's a good point. I think it's possible.
Yeah. Addition or consideration.
I mean, what
Yeah, it's hard to tell the scale of that, but at least in this drawing looks a bit small, but that one looks fine. It depends. I think it should be closer to that.
So we could condition it to be like the
Condition
color perspective.
to go to a larger scale of.
Well, just to match that,
Yeah.
illustrate
Yeah.
the color illustration.
To address the scale of the stacked stone to match the perspective drawing. Yes,
Rendering, yes.
the rendering.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is that do we have a motion to we had discussed?
I'll make a motion for approval with the comments and conditions.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Board Member Garagos and a second by Board Member Malakian to approve. I'm assuming approve?
Yes.
To approve. Yes. With the conditions and amendments we made to staff's recommendations that we had discussed. This will be roll call. Board Member Karuglian,
Yes.
Board Member Garagos,
Yes.
Board Member Malakian,
Yes.
Board Member Sakai,
Yes.
Mr. Chair Zarifian.
Yes.
Okay, we have a 5-0 vote to approve with the conditions stated.
We have minutes to approve.
Yes, we have, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from April the 26th, and all board members were present except for Board Member Garagos.
I had a, if I can find it.
April 25th.
Yeah. The speakers on, the last speaker on the item was a female sung. I think the card said Andrew sung, but the
The sister.
sister
Right.
spoke.
Yeah.
I don't know her name. Maybe that can be updated to reflect that she spoke instead of him.
Okay.
And I don't know if the other names are correct or not, because there's a lot of people.
Yes, correct. So we will review the tape. Are there any other comments regarding the minutes?
I think Rather did a really nice job in documenting.
Quite a number of conditions on that one, yes. So, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes with the one correction.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Sakai, a second by Board Member Malikian. Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Board Member Karoglian?
Yes.
And Chairman Zarifian?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0, obviously with the abstention from Board Member Garagos. And with that, any other comments today? No? Stephanie
Any?
will be back. Oh, as a matter of fact, the next meeting for Board Number 2, which is scheduled for May the 24th, your meeting will be dark because there will be a special Historic Preservation Commission meeting.
Sorry to give you the night off.
So, unfortunately, you will not be
Bad
meeting
news.
in 2 weeks, but you'll be meeting in 2 weeks following that. So,
Okay.
already in June. So,
All right. Thank you
that
so much.
said, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
All in favor? Yes.
Thank you very much.
Meeting adjourned.